There, look at the donkey. She's got it. Set the hook.
All right, well, after a couple weeks, I am on my way home. And I started thinking about it. If you want to be a bass pro, try the back seat. That's what I did back in the 1990s before I jumped to the front, and it was probably the best experience that I ever had. So Coosa River Bassmaster Open was exciting. Loved it. It's been over a decade. As I've mentioned before, that I've been out fishing. And so I decided to jump in the back seat thanks to my good friend Bruce Harris, who was my team partner in California for many years, and we toured together a lot. And so my good friends Jim and Sharon Brannon from the Gadsden area, good friends of mine, allowed me to stay at their place, and they were off on vacation, and their kids are just absolutely amazing. Katie, Will, and Daniel. So it was just really a blessing to be able to stay with them. And it's always nicer to stay with friends than it is to stay in the hotel room. Always nicer, but you have to do what you have to do. In this case, I got very lucky to stay with some friends. Jim had a great friend of his by the name of Dallas McElroy, who happens to be a legend on the Coosa River there in the Gadsden area. Had a great time fishing with him for a couple days, so I can't thank him enough for taking me out. So you're probably wondering, well, why are you going out on the water when you have to sit in the back seat and you can't really tell the pro where to go? Well, it's always good to get an idea and do some homework before the tournament. And even if you can't fish the tournament, it's always good to get an idea of what the river's like, in this case, the Coosa River. So I was able to do that for 2 days and just had a great time with Dallas, and actually created a new friend. Man, the friends that you meet on the road here when you're fishing is absolutely amazing. First day, I drew a young kid from Texas, Dakota Eber. I'm telling you right now why I remember that name. Absolutely phenomenal fisherman. The fishing conditions were very difficult, and he managed to call a couple times. He brought in 5 fish, and I managed to get 1 bite that day and brought that fish in. But I learned a lot from him. I always try to learn something from my backs when I'm fishing on the back seat. Things that I maybe I didn't know and can apply to another situation. So that's what fishing on the back seat is so great about, is you're able to learn, okay? You're learning from the pro. But not only that, is you're not fishing against the pro. You'll hear me say this more than once, but I find that there's the 3 top things, and in this order too, that I apply when I'm fishing a tournament. I don't care what tournament it is, whether I'm in the front of the boat or the back of the boat, but the number 1 is you're fishing against yourself. This is a mental game, and you better be on your game. You don't win tournaments when you're not mentally there. If you lose a big fish, how fast are you able to recover and put that into action is a question you have to ask yourself. So number 1 is you fish against them too, and number 2 is you fish against the fish. That's one of the variables of this sport that and no other sport can really match. And so you're fishing against those fish, and it's difficult. And number 3 is your competitors. I put those way down on the bottom of number 3, okay? You're fishing against the other guys, and I don't really worry about them at all when I'm fishing. I'm not thinking, oh man, wonder if what's his name's getting them today. Not at all. And be careful to fall into that trap too, okay? Be very, very careful to fall in that trap. So the tournament is 2 days for the Bassmaster Open. And if you're just starting bass fishing, see what local clubs are in your area, bass clubs. See what local fishing clubs are in your area, and join one of them and fish out of the back of the boat. Greatest place to start. And then as you inch up, fish, the highest you can go is the Bassmaster Opens, fishing out of the back. So it's a 2-day event, and first day Second day, I drew Theron Caldwell, also from the Texas area, and he caught his 5th fish, good quality fish, about 15 minutes before weigh-in. I got, again, 1 keeper bite, put him in the boat. So I left that tournament fairly satisfied. And why is that? Well, sure, would I've liked to have done better? Absolutely. But here's the key. When I got bit, I caught the fish. So it can be very, very strenuous. You're out there for sometimes, 7 to 8, 9 hours. You got to be ready when you get bit that you capitalize on that. That goes right back to number 1. I was telling you, this is a mental game. Every cast, I am predicting that a fish is going to bite that bait that I'm using. So Coosa River baits. If you're going to Coosa River, well, shoot, anything from a Kitech shad looking dipped in chartreuse. And by the way, I forgot to mention, I was able to do a pre-fish. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is usually the pre-fish days. Tournament days start Thursday, Friday, and then they take the top 12 to Saturday. I was able to fish with Brian Smith, who is a friend of mine from out in California. He was the only California guy to fish the Central Open on this event. So a big shout out to Brian Smith, great guy. And he was fishing, during pre-fish, I was feeling pretty confident. 2 baits that I was confident was the 3.8 Kitech in a shad-looking color with a dipped chartreuse tail. They seem to like chartreuse on the Coosa River. Also, a red core trick worm. Red core trick worm. During pre-fish, Bryant had shown me a crawdad that had chunked up threw up a crawdad, and it was bright. It was red and dark black color, and that red core trick worm, which is tough to get from Zoom. So I mainly threw those 2 things the whole time on the Coosa River. So what did my first day pro throw? He threw a frog. By the way, he caught a frog fish, 3-pounder, but he broke it off. But he was throwing a white chatterbait, 1/2 ounce chatterbait with a trailer dipped in white trailer Zoom, and the chatterbait was just white. And he was pretty much throwing that all day. That's pretty much what he caught all his fish on. Day 2, my pro Theron threw a Carolina rig with a 6-inch Zoom Lizard chartreuse black flake. He had 5 bites, and they were quality bites. That bumped him up really high in the standings. So that is the baits that we threw at the Coosa River. So then I was off to the Cherokee Lake Cherokee, in and out of Knoxville, a little bit north of Knoxville, and I'm going to tell you the story about that here coming shortly. All right, off to Cherokee Lake for the Bassmaster Open, which is the final event too. And one of the things I failed to mention, that these lakes that and the river system that we fished, just leaving the Coosa, was in October. These lakes were scheduled for earlier in the year, but this is 2020, the year of the pandemic and all kinds of other stuff going on. So we're finding ourselves in just pre-fall conditions. Water's starting to drop. Both places about 75 down to 60, 68, 69. So it's that transition period, which is why the Coosa River is so tough. But I had no idea how difficult the Lake Cherokee was. So my good friend Tim and Dina Hendricks, stayed with them. Again, it's good to have friends in places, but I've known Tim for many years. Again, another traveling partner of mine when I fished on the pro side. I got to Knoxville, stayed the weekend, and then on Monday morning it was off with his camper trailer. We stayed at Panther Creek campground there in Cherokee Lake, a beautiful state-run campground, absolutely a wonderful So I'd strongly recommend, if you're going to go camping on Lake Cherokee, that's just a beautiful place. Tim did scope it out and found the right campsite for us that we could park a boat and he could do the camper too. So it was two complete rigs we were able to fit in that camp spot. So that was absolutely wonderful. First day of pre-fish, within hours, I knew that this lake was going to be very, very difficult to fish. And I hadn't really decided what I was going to do yet, because again, we had to do what the pro does. And so we fished Monday and Tuesday. It was so bad that on Wednesday morning, during the short pre-fish day, you have to be off the water usually on Wednesdays by 12 o'clock. So we chose not to even get on the water and fish it at that point. So we prepared, got signed in, and then it was off to the pairing. We got paired, and I got paired with a great guy out of South Carolina, and that was Daryl Halbert. And we had just had Hurricane Sally the day before down in Navarre, where I come from, come barreling through. Well, the next morning it was barreling through Tennessee, and it was absolutely pouring rain, and it poured pretty much all night long until about noon that day. We tried fishing for those smallmouth, and Daryl had found pods of bait underneath where the bait were the smallmouth, but they just weren't biting that day. I did get one short bite, and that was it. I capitalized on it and did catch it, but that was really it for the day. We both blanked 0-0. Talk about a mental game. But the great thing about it is there was about 87 other people that blanked that first day. So day 2, again, that storm worked through. We got a cold front just turning cold, snap. But I figured, you know what, I'm giving my best shot on day 2. And on day 2, I drew a great kid out of Birmingham, and he had caught 4 fish the first day, and he was going way up the river. Now, I hadn't pre-fished with Tim way up the river, and so I didn't really know what to expect, and it was pretty muddy way up the river. Plus, it had been raining all night too, the day before. So the river had come up a little bit, but I don't think it had really affected it. And so I fished with Luke Plunkett. Now, isn't that a cool name, Luke Plunkett? I told him, that's like a Bassmaster Classic name, okay? So we fished. He told me the night before when we talked that he was going to hug the bank and crank all day long in about 5 to 8 foot of water, which made it very difficult for me. And he let me know that, but he's the pro, and I am going to do what I can out of the back. So what did I do? I'll tell you here in a second. So what did I do out of the back seat? Well, I did what the best I could, and that was I did some cranking, but I found it was just best for me to do a split shot rig. And I had a Zoom Lizard on. Color was kind of a pumpkin color with some orange and black flake in it. I dipped the tail in chartreuse, and I split shot. Now, I didn't Carolina rig behind him, and the reason for it is he was fishing up the river, bluff walls. The water was anywhere from 5 to 8 foot deep that he was cranking in, because he was tucked up pretty good along the bank. And what I did is I split shot. I didn't want a Carolina rig because I got hung up a lot. It was shell rock, and what I did is I just kind of kept my rod tip up, and I would be ticking and going over the rocks, hoping that I'd get around a rock or something, and that there would be a smallie sitting there ready to see something. Real interesting thing too is he didn't go into the current, up the current, he went down with the current. And I thought that was maybe a new technique, and I asked him the reason for that. I go, is there something new here? Aren't you supposed to go into the current? Because what happens is these fish, they position their face into the current, okay? And so they're waiting for something to wash on down, and they could just eat it. But he was doing it the opposite way, and he said it really didn't matter when he was cranking, which made sense. The other thing too is I don't believe he wanted to wear his batteries down. Now, the current wasn't that strong, but he's the pro, okay? And so that day he was cranking, and I was, like I said, I had a lizard, and then I also tied on a fluke later on, a white, bright fluke. I didn't dip the tail in chartreuse. I just figured just go with that. And I caught one fish, one short that day. Okay. Again, Luke caught 4 fish. He cranked them up. And one of them came off, so he really brought in 3 fish for 5 pounds. I was really happy for him. He's a great young kid. Get ready to watch him. He's 23 years old, but Luke Plunkett from Birmingham, Alabama. The guy's got some heart and passion. He's not sponsored yet, so anyone that sponsors him is going to be very, very fortunate, because they're going to see the returns on their investment for that sponsorship. I have no doubt. But he did lose his biggest fish of the day on 3.5 pounds on a crankbait. Something that you gotta do, and you gotta realize can happen when you're throwing a crankbait, and those fish are very lively. So he brought in 3 fish for 5 pounds. I was very happy for him. He was able to cut a check, and again, I didn't catch a fish that day. Am I bummed? Not at all. I realize, and I'll leave you with this story here. Babe Ruth, one of the greatest names in baseball, it was known for his home runs. But a lot of people don't know he also had the record for the most strikeouts. But you know, you don't remember those things. You just remember Babe Ruth for being the greatest baseball player for his home runs and his flamboyant personality also. But so that's what you got to go into. You got to remember, you want to be a bass pro, start in the bass seat. Ask Justin Lucas. You get a chance to meet him. He fished for a long time out of the back seat, and I'm very proud of what Justin's been able to accomplish by taking the proper steps. So if you can't jump in the front of the boat right away and learn it the hard way, jump in the back of the boat. Start at the club level if you have to. And I'm excited to get home here after being gone for a couple weeks to see my wife and my family. So I hope that helps a little bit. Remember, take these nuggets and tuck them away. And always remember that you're just one cast away. Hey, I just wanted to go over some of the baits real quick on what I used during the Bassmaster Opens here in October of 2020 on the Coosa River, and some of the baits I used on Cherokee Lake. So I'm going to go over very quickly what I used, the reason behind it. First of all, in the Coosa River, I had a chance to fish for 3 days with pro Brian Smith. One of his baits, and the Coosa River, remember, it's flowing. They're going to draw water during certain times of the day. That gets the fish activated and gets them up kind of on the banks, behind stumps, things, wherever they can find that current flow that washes food towards them. They're going to be hiding and ambushing. So one of the things that he had done was he was using this race swimmer Strike King 3 3/4 inch. But because this is a spotted river system, and these Coosa spots are worldwide known for being mean. By the way, take a look at the 3-pounder that I caught. That's cool, huh? Plus 3 1/4 actually. But what he would do is he would take this dipping die and he would dip it in there. He would Texas rig it with about a 1/4 ounce weight, flip it, and let it work its way down around either items that were below the water, sunken stumps, or tree branches, whatever. Okay, and like I said, that's where I caught that large spot, was throwing it in front of something. He was sitting there ready to ambush it, and he ate it hard. The other thing too is I was able to fish with Dallas, who's a local legend on the Coosa River there in Gadsden, and he had told me that red black core trick worms are really great to use. And I've got here as a shaky head. Okay, if you're not familiar with a shaky head, I'm going to have all this information below too, by the way. But the weight I like to use is about 3/16. I may go down or even up on that, depending on, you know, again, what the fish are trying to tell me. But they usually come like this. They'll have you tuck that in, I usually take a little bit of it, cut it off, put that on there, and then come through and Texas rig it. Shaky head, all right? Now, Bryant had shown me a picture of a fish that he had caught during a pre-fish day that him and I weren't together, and that crawdad was, guess what? It was this color. So right away, I put it on and caught a couple fish on it. And so this is, I'm ready for the tournament to fish with this. I'm ready during the tournament to fish with this. But remember, I'm fishing on the back as a non-boater. So I've got to go where the boater goes. So I was very, I changed it up, but mainly through this for the entire 2 days. I'm changing it up a little bit here and there, trying different things. But in these conditions that they were very difficult, you had to be ready. If you got a bite, you better be on it. So little bit, I talked a little bit about the tube. If you didn't watch the other video that I have, I was throwing the tube. One, I did fish with Dallas, who is from the Gadsden area, and I was using a tube, and the weight is actually embedded in there. It's a snag-proof weight that the hook, and I use number 3/0 Gamakatsu Superline EWGs. They're great, and the lines I use is anywhere between 15 and 25 pounds, mainly 20 pound when I'm flipping those tubes, okay? That's kind of the way that worked. Now, that my first day pro threw a frog, and he threw a white 1/2 ounce chatterbait, all right, that he caught fish on. Those were his 2 main baits that he used. He culled twice. He caught 7 fish. Came in that first day with about 6 pounds. I only had 1 bite. Brought him in. Okay. The second day pro that I fished with, and he threw the entire time. He threw a Zoom lizard chartreuse. This is not it, but a chartreuse with black flake, and he caught his quality fish. Caught his 5th fish with about 15 minutes left to go. How awesome is that? I was really excited for him. He really moved up the board that day with about 10 plus pounds. Okay, that was the Coosa River, and of course right after that I was on my way to Cherokee Lake, where I met up with my friend Tim Hendricks, and we pre-fished for a couple days, and I knew after those couple days and that's kind of his home lake. He loves that lake, but again, the fishing conditions were so difficult. But as in everything, somebody always manages to catch them, and the first day, my pro and myself, we both blanked. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. It was very, very difficult bite. The day 2, it seemed to get a little bit better, the bite. We had just had Hurricane Zeta come through, and if you listen to it, well, Sig, I thought you said Hurricane Sally. We've had so many hurricanes this year that I can't keep track of them, but it was Hurricane Zeta and had just come through, so each day got a little bit better. So that second day, my guy cranked parallel with the bank. It was very difficult for me. He was up in the river, and it was rock, and I thought probably the best thing to do for me would be to not Carolina rig, okay, but to actually split shot. So what's the difference between a Carolina and a split shot? Well, I've got my Carolina rig here with the lizard, okay. This seemed to be a very good color. It's a green pumpkin magic. Did I get bit? No, but that's a color that's kind of popular on that lake. And I have a split shot here, just a lead split shot that actually opens up and shuts, and then I can adjust where I want to place that at. Why did I go with a split shot? For this reason, is that shell rock was everywhere. If I'm just going to Carolina rig, I'd be getting hung up and broken off, and I did get broke off a lot. But with a split shot, it's just small enough to where it can kind of pop around things. Did I get hung up? Yeah, I broke off a lot. For that, I used the Gamakatsu worm hooks. It's 2/0 that I used that worked really good. And again, I use these split shot weights. I have different sizes, so I kind of just let it go. But it was only about 5 to 8 foot where I was fishing. And again, I would cast out as far as I can and just kind of drag it. And I did catch one, but it was a short for that day. So that's mainly what I used on day 2 when it came to Cherokee Lake. I hope that helps. I hope that what I'm able to do is give you some ideas of the fishing conditions. When they're difficult, you downsize. In many cases, but again, always let the fish tell you what they want, and sometimes They don't tell you at all. But that's fishing. That's why we enjoy the sport. That's the reason we go chase these things with tails on it. So I really hope that helps. If you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, click that bell, because we're here to make a lot of videos to help teach you how to go out and catch more and bigger fish.